if you're at a college or a university, you should be making sure that your athletic teams are not flying around in the same airplanes that have been flying your shackled neighbors around in. We had a case here in Minnesota a couple of months ago where the same airplane left Minnesota, brought people down to El Paso, I think Arlington, somewhere in Texas, to one of the ICE detention centers. It did a short hop to Austin, where it picked up the University of Wisconsin Badgers women's volleyball team, and then flew them back to Madison after the conclusion of a volleyball tournament down there in Texas. Same day, same airplane that had people chained up in it, possibly soiling themselves while they're getting flown. And then hours later, there's a picture on Instagram of the Badgers volleyball coach, holding a trophy in the seat next to him that could have been occupied by a shackled migrant hours before that same day.
Hi, this is Kevin, and welcome to Occupation Breakdown. To introduce our guest today, I have a quick video.
The Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, where deportation flights have surged under the Trump administration. We met up with Nick Benson, an aviation enthusiast who began documenting ICE flights last April.
So which airplane are we looking out for right now?
We're looking at the white airplane that's a little bit in the distance there. In small letters on the side, it says Eastern Air Express on the side. And their bread and butter is doing deportation flights for ICE, ICE Air, as DHS calls it. Generally, these are people that are they're in their street clothes, they're whatever they got picked up in. We saw someone who was still wearing their Amazon delivery driver uniform. You could see the big Amazon logo on the back, and they have a distinctive uniform. You know what it looks like.
ICE chartered flights like these became the subject of a White House propaganda campaign last year.
Closing time.
While many are destined for detention facilities in states like Louisiana and Florida, some have also been sent to high-security offshore prisons in Guantanamo Bay or El Salvador, sites notorious for reports of torture.
How many people do you usually see being loaded onto them?
The number of flights we've been getting here has died down as the official surge has died down. We're down to 2 flights a week now. There were some weeks where we had 2 or 3 flights every day. I mean, literally every day for a couple of months, I think. It feels like a small number, but obviously if that's your mom or dad on that flight, that's still a very large number of people who are getting put on these flights in a position where we know that due process wasn't followed and that they were detained without proper probable cause. Yeah, so we are seeing people loading now. We can see 2 or 3 DHS ICE vans that are pulled up next to it. They're shuffling around the personal effects of the detainees that are coming and going on this flight. They're going to make sure that they have their wrap device, which is like a full body straitjacket thing. They call it the burrito. You'll see them dragging the lengths of chain out that will be used for the next round of detainees. It's all gut-wrenching and it's just completely routine. Like if you weren't aware of what was happening, sitting in the airport here, you could look out and you would have no idea that that's going on right there. Like it's a dark stain on, how I feel as an American.
All right. Welcome, Nick Benson. Thank you much for being here today. I've been really excited to talk with you, as weird of a thing that is to say about this issue.
Well, it's nice to be here. And yeah, everything that's been going on in the Twin Cities for the last several months has been something that having any discussion about it requires so many qualifiers and its nuances and all of that. Of course, we're all on the same team here. And we know you're not belittling or making light of anything, of course.
Yeah. But nice to finally talk with you today. So obviously we just watched that video from Zateo. You've become a I don't know if a household name or whatever, in the state of Minnesota as well for a lot of people, as far as trying to get out the information of anybody counting who is coming in and out of the state. So I appreciate you being here. But my first question for you is, I guess, how did you go from being just a dad and what you said, aviation enthusiast to where you're at now? Kind of walk me through that journey.
Yeah, I went from being an airplane geek to a concerned eccentric to an accidental activist, I think, is kind of the progression that I did. My day job, such as it is running a subscription app that tells airplane nerds when to go to the airport to see cool airplanes. So my job before all of this, or I guess still now, is, generally I'm out trying to get people excited about aviation, so they'll subscribe to my app. So I spend a lot of time at the airport looking at airplanes, watching airplanes. It was, as a hobby, it's something I enjoy doing. The aviation's a cool thing. I like aviation photography, especially. It scratches an itch for me. I noticed in April the ICE Air flights were no longer showing up on the schedule, the public flight schedule here at MSP, because the government was taking steps to reduce the transparency related to their operations. I thought that was kind of a new and interesting thing. And when I'm saying April, this is a year ago now. Thought that was kind of interesting. Took some pictures of it and put them on Reddit. It got a lot of attention, but I didn't devote too much bandwidth to it. After that, I was paying attention to what was going on, and I was actually at an airplane nerd meetup, and in September, and I was talking to a friend, Seth Miller. He's an aviation journalist and activist out in the Northeast, out of New Hampshire. And I was telling him that I admired the work that he's been doing. He specifically was running a billboard campaign to raise awareness for Avelo Airlines, which was a small passenger airline that sells ticketed flights, but also has they also do charter. We're also doing ICE Air flights. So he had billboards that were raising awareness for that. I told him I admired his gumption and his courage to use his voice like that. And he said, it's not that hard. You just have to, I said, I wish I could do that. And he said, oh, it's not that hard. You just have to do it, And little did he know he was pushing a snowball down a big hill. I started showing up at airport commission meetings in November. Had a couple of times going out and getting some indie press out that were interested in covering it. And yeah, kind of snowballed from there. I got looped in with the Minnesota 5051 people, and we started tracking and publishing the number of people getting on these flights. And this was, this was before the surge. This was just something that, myself and other like-minded folks like yourself got interested in this. And, and then everyone knows it became the interesting global top global news story for several weeks. And we got all of this attention here. And it turns out that I'm good at yammering for long periods of time, as you've noticed since you asked me a question a few minutes ago and haven't had to follow up. I just kind of start going. Yeah. So raising awareness about all of this has kind of been what I've been focused on for the last few months. So yeah, I'm lucky. I have a flexible schedule. I have a supportive family. I don't have a boss that I need to worry about other than my aforementioned better half. And so, yeah, I had expertise and ability. And yeah, I think it's some of the most important work I'll ever get a chance to do. And yeah, I'm proud of what I've been able to do so far. We've raised a lot of awareness, and I've talked to a lot of nice people who've given me a lot of nice compliments. It makes me feel good that I'm making a difference. And I know other people have gotten interested and told me that they're involved now because of things that I said or did, which is really humbling. That's pretty cool. So we're all doing what we can to make a difference. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. That's great. When did you say you joined 5051?
Well, I don't remember specifically. It would have been in the fall sometime between that. It was probably December, I would guess, but I'm not certain.
I think we were around the same time there. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Cause the surge was that November. I don't know when in November. I feel like it was around November or something when that started, right?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't remember it all. It feels like a million years ago. Yeah, so
It's incredible at this point. So before all of this, obviously, you said that was April when you had noticed this. Before April, were you fairly involved in just even like looking into politics, knowing what's going on? Were you just kind of, in your own world, or is this kind of one of those things that you happen upon it and it's like, holy shit, I gotta.
so I've always I did some campaigning for DFL candidates in the 2018 midterms during Trump's first term. That got me interested in that. That was kind of the first time I ever did anything that was directly related to politics and got involved in caucusing and all of that. And so that was in 2018. I went to some protests again after Trump was reelected. I wasn't at the very first 50-51 protest that they helped organize, but I think I've been at most of the large ones since. I've always paid attention to the news, and I feel like I'm an informed person who keeps track of the news. And it certainly wasn't to the level of being an activist or anything like that, where there was a cause that I was routinely championing or anything like that.
Yeah.
That all feels pretty new.
Yeah. So with you doing the flight tracking, were you just you started to do that independently, or did you just happen to tell people, and or like when you and 50-51 kind of merged, and you obviously have been broadcasting through their channels as well, and obviously have been affiliated. How did that kind of form? Was it they just noticed you doing your thing and it had contacted you?
Yeah, I showed up at an airport commission meeting to talk about the ICE Air flights on my own accord, which is a little bit unusual. I don't think most people get interested or passionate enough about something to do something like that. And just kind of I don't remember exactly how it all happened. I know there are the labor people who are involved in helping getting me connected with 50-51. They recognized that I was a concerned eccentric who was good at yapping at people and was kind of feisty. So that was a good fit for 50-51. They had been doing some other actions where they were being supportive of labor actions. So it was a good fit. Because I'm not in a union. I'm self-employed. So I guess I have nothing. I'm very pro-union, but I'm not a union member myself, just given I'm self-employed. So anyway, I got looped in with 50-51 as I was pretty feisty, and as you know, 50-51 here is a pretty feisty group, generally speaking. So
yeah, agreed. So did they happen to notice that you were doing flight tracking and then just kind of went from there, basically?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, and it was, we were at the same metropolitan airport commissions. That's our local airport authority. We were all showing up to the same meetings. I wasn't officially looped in with anyone at that point, but we've all become friends. We've done a lot of work especially with SEIU 26 and Minnesota 50-51. So I'm a member of 50-51, of course, and just a good ally of SEIU 26. They're doing good work.
Yeah. And so kind of leading into that, this is a little preview of some of the videos that are typically broadcast by 50-51. And Nick, I believe on your Blue Sky account as well, right?
Indeed. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. Roll it. Go for it.
Really quick. Yeah, and I believe that was an older one. I thought I grabbed a recent one, but
that's the most recent one. That was
okay.
The video I edited and posted yesterday.
Okay,
so that's fresh.
So anyways, so obviously you've been posting these videos outside of people coming through the airport. Is there anybody else that really knows who is coming in and out of here? Do you know if there are any other avenues, or is this basically the only way that we know people are kind of like leaving the state at this point?
As far as the number of people that are involved, And as far as knowing about it more or less as it happens, I believe we're still pretty much the only source for those data. I believe that's the case. So, yeah, we're certainly the only people who are publishing anything that the public can see on a regular basis. Yeah, so I think we still kind of have a monopoly on that. The airport is the narrow end of the funnel as far as ICE operations go in the region. Generally, to my knowledge, pretty much everyone in the area that gets processed through Whipple, and it's my understanding the area they cover extends out into the Dakotas and northern Iowa and western Wisconsin. They all funnel through Whipple and through our airport here. So,
Jeez.
Yeah, Minnesota Public Radio News and Sahan Journal did an analysis of data that was released to deportationdata.org through FOIA requests. And their numbers that they had were within, I think, 2.5% of the numbers that we were reporting, which is a margin of error of less than one person per plane, per flight. So that was pretty good. Our numbers have been good for as long as we've been publishing them, so that's, yeah. As far as I know, if you're interested in the number of people coming or going on the flights here, I'm not aware of anyone else who has information on
Yeah, because
granularity.
DHS isn't giving anything out, right? From what I've heard.
No, not on any sort of a regular basis. It only comes in fits and spurts when public records requests come through, and they're able to collect and publish them that way.
So obviously we look at the video there, and I've heard talks about this before, and in the freezing weather at the start of this, not the start, but we'll say the height of this during the extreme parts of the surge after Renee Good was murdered and Alex Preddy and all that, when we were experiencing the most freezing and brutal weather during this. Can you explain kind of what those circumstances were like and kind of the things that you saw during that period?
Yeah, I mean, it was really cold, and the process of people getting loaded onto these flights at the airport is the same, rain, snow, sun, or otherwise. A convoy of vans or buses. We had, I think they would be called a mini bus when Metro Surge was at its peak. They'll come in and they bring the people are shackled up. I think the shackles are placed on them probably at Whipple. They drive them in a short distance. They bring them to the airplane, and they are brought out of the vehicle, that the automobile or bus that they've come in on. They're given a security inspection on the tarmac. They frisk them. They, especially with women who have longer hair, they will go through their hair to make sure there's nothing on the detained people, and then they hobble up the steps onto the airplane. This happens when it's pouring rain, when it's freezing cold and windy, and they're just dressed in whatever clothes they were picked up in. So whether that be a little pink parka for a little old lady that we've seen getting on the flights, or an Amazon delivery driver's uniform, it's whatever whatever they have on their back is what they're traveling in. So it's it's tough. They've been out in some bad conditions, and they'll be in those shackles for hours until they get where they're going. Sometimes those flights were going to Omaha first and would continue on to El Paso or Louisiana. They might have to make a stop or two before they get to the detention center they're going to, and yeah, it's hours and hours chained up, and it's terrible.
So of all the kind of things that you've witnessed so far as you've done that, is there something that stands out as like one of the most alarming or kind of, life-changing things that you've seen?
The things that have kind of made my head glitch a little bit, or stood out, or caused some sort of had a psychological impact on me, I think there are three things. It's hearing stories about my kids at school who have classmates who are afraid that their mom and dad aren't going to be home in the evening when they get home from school. When I saw them handling the shackles the first time was hard. You'll see the shackles are flown in the, kind of in the trunk of the airplane, in the belly cargo hold, and they unload them and are moving them around. And these are big, they look like they're 5 or 6 6-foot long chains, because it's a belt that goes around your waist, and then there's handcuffs and shackles that go between your legs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just seeing people handling shackles like that was very disturbing. Just on a, you think back in U.S. history of when we've been putting people in
Slave
chains like
ships or
that. It's
something,
not,
yeah.
it's not good. And then the third thing that really got to me was when I was doing some observation and patrol stuff, and we had a situation at an apartment complex where there was a family who had discovered their loved one's car parked in a handicap spot where it shouldn't have been. And their loved one was gone. They couldn't get a hold of them, and they were just driving around in circles in the parking lot, just terrified. And they didn't know, they couldn't trust anyone to help them. And yeah, those are my 3 things that kind of really stuck out to me that were bad, both at the airport and related there too. I've had the opportunity to talk about them enough now that I don't usually start getting too weepy when I'm thinking about it. But it's been hard. It's for everyone. And, I'm a big white dude. I can kind of take a step back and know that I'm not going to get detained and flown away. And I know that my family is, for the most part, pretty safe. And I can't imagine what this whole situation has been like and continues to be like for our neighbors who are people of color. It's really horrible.
Yeah. So obviously people are, in Minnesota are being taken illegally, and they're being taken without warrants and whatever reason, and being, flown across state lines, across the country, potentially out of the country, and whatever that case. So obviously we're dealing with, human trafficking here. So at what point did what was that experience like, realizing that you were stumbling upon human trafficking going on in your backyard? Like,
I think that's kind of what got me interested in it in the first place, because I don't know if that was I don't know that was necessarily a process or a realization. I mean, it was just being upset that was the reality that we were living in, I guess. I don't think I've talked to a lot of people about this process. I don't know that anyone's ever asked me about that before.
like was there a moment that it like finally clicked, and it was like, because sometimes I think you see something, you realize that you're angry in the moment, and then maybe you have the moment where you see people in shackles, you actually see it for the first time, or and then it becomes like, this is real.
Yeah. I mean, one of the time, another time, I mean, just the process of talking through this process with other people who are asking questions. Again, like other times that like my brain is glitched a little bit. Someone asked me a question where, we had gone to the airport and they were watching me. They were documenting the process of what I was doing. And the person interviewing me asked, do you think you'll ever see any of these people back here again? Do you think about when they'll come home? And that was not something I had ever considered before. That was tough. Like, yeah. So how do you, that was tough. I hadn't I hadn't thought about it in that sort of a context or terms before. That was hard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's an example of just of having gone and seen the same thing over and over again. There's a process of erosion that takes place on me. So I mean, it's all part of the process of just kind of normalizing things, and it's just in the background, and it's the way things have always been. And it's the complicit state of, well, that's might be bad or whatever, but whatever, that's the whole idea is to normalize the mechanized, mass production way that it's perceived. So it doesn't, those moments where it hits me like that are fewer and further between now, thank goodness, because if that was happening every time I was going to the airport, I'd be
in shambles, right?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's tough. I mean, yeah. The part that makes it harder for me now is we had someone who had a request to see some they were helping someone out who had been involved in an incident here in Burnsville. That's where I'm from, a few months ago. And they were asking if I had a copy of some video of that incident. And so earlier that morning, I had gone through and found the footage they were looking for. But man, it was tough going back and seeing all those guys in my neighborhood again. And then my wife and I decided we were going to go out for lunch, and we're driving through town and just took the same, part of the route that I did many, many, many times when we were doing patrol and observation stuff. And it was just coming back to me, the family that was panicky and looking for their family, and the time we found ICE agents that were parked by the skating rink in our town.
I have a picture of that at mine, literally.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Sick.
yeah,
It's sick.
it's terrible. So so that was tough. So like we went to Dairy Queen to have lunch, and I'm just sitting there and getting weepy, and so that was tough. But as far as the airport stuff goes, it's been, I feel I've gotten acclimated to it, I guess, as horrible as that sounds, but
Yeah.
it's tough. I think I don't know what the exact count is. It's somewhere like 80 or 90 of these flights that I've personally witnessed.
I think it was 94 or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Let me see what it says.
That's since the beginning of this year. I haven't witnessed every single one of those flights, because on some of these times there were 3 flights a day, and there's a team of people that are helping. I'm doing a lot of the work, but there are other people helping too. But as far as the number of flights that I directly witnessed myself, it's somewhere around 80 or 90 flights.
Yeah.
And around 2,500 people that I've seen getting on. And so that's, it's a lot. And it's, it's depressing to linger on. But I mean, these are people's families and neighbors, and it's,
Yeah.
if we're not there documenting it, that's really important. I was at an event, and there was someone who was mentioning, that their loved one had been taken, and they were very moved that someone was at the airport to document their loved one leaving and counting them. That was very important to them. And that was I get weepy thinking about that. That was an important example of how reinforcing that we're doing good, important work, to just have an accounting of what's going on here. If you look back in history, after the Dakota conflict around I'm sorry, I don't remember the preferred nomenclature for it now. I learned about it as the Sioux Uprising when I was a kid, but I know it's not the proper nomenclature, and I apologize for not remembering. But that was around the time of the Civil War. Many of the people who were the non-combatant relatives of the people involved in that process, the people who were directly involved in the bad stuff, as far as the government was concerned, were all hanged in Mankato. Their families were sent to a concentration camp that was at Fort Snelling and spent the winter there. And the ones who survived, and had been, had received religious care from a progressive member of the clergy, they made it through the winter, the ones that did, and then they were sent out on a pair of steamships from Fort Snelling. And the airport is at Fort Snelling now. The airport's address is on the unincorporated territory of Fort Snelling.
Correct.
Same place.
Whipple too.
And that progressive bishop was Henry Whipple. That's the name
correct.
that the federal building's named after, where everyone's held before they're sent out now.
Yeah.
And so it's just an example of history being a circle. And I believe that if you go down to Fort Snelling now by the visitor center, there's a monument, dedicated to that, how that happened. And I know that someday there will be another monument around the airport that commemorates the fact that this was all happening and we let it happen. So it's it's horrible.
What a nightmare. And obviously, when you look into like World War II, and obviously they're not loading up trains, they're loading up planes, and you're the one here, documenting it. So I guess my before I kind of move on to the next topic, my last question here, and take your time you need, but, you go through all this stuff, and obviously this has had some effects on you psychologically, I'm sure. Just in general, how has this kind of changed your perspective on life, or just, how are you moving differently now?
Man, how has it changed my perspective on life? That's been a mixed bag because it's a realization of the negative things it's a realization that even politicians who you like can let you down or not act or respond as quickly as you wish.
Yeah.
And so you'll have to forgive me. I know we're all on different parts of our journey of becoming enlightened to be disappointed by the establishment. So,
Pretty far down that, so don't worry about me.
yeah. No, I know you're good, but like
The
just
viewers,
for like my
the
own personal
viewers or
journey, like
whatever, yeah.
I got through high school in American history learning about protests and things and thinking, well, that's all well and good, but we've solved all of the problems. So what,
Yeah.
and like, so that's where I'm starting in my formative years. That's where I was excited when Colin Powell was going to go to the UN and, give the slam dunk evidence on the Iraq war. Like that's where I was as a good child of conservatives at the time.
Yeah.
That was my headspace
I was there too. I get
to
it.
where I'm at now. And so that's, there's been a lot of progress that's been made. So, but I've been even, it's just the disappointment by people who, even when you like them, the amount of inaction and the lack of response and spine that they show, is very frustrating and disheartening. On the other side, positives, I've learned a lot about the value of teamwork. I'm 41 years old now, and it took me until I was about 41 years old to realize like the value of teamwork, where you're working and collaborating with other people and you're getting a result that's larger than the sum of its parts.
Correct.
I know that's a cliche, but like it
Get it.
took me this long
I'll
to
struggle with it too.
it took me this long to get there. So
Yeah.
so that's worth something. That's been helpful psychologically.
You have to kind of like let go sometimes, and yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And delegate things. And especially with Minnesota 5051, they are such an awesome group of people. I've been doing a lot of support and helping. If I come up with some harebrained scheme that's a little bit out of my wheelhouse, I can delegate it and other awesome people deal with it and get it taken care of.
That is true.
It's very cool. And generating the graphics that we have for, we send out an alert for the flights when they're coming so other people can go see them. Those are not graphics that I came up with, and I still am not frequently publishing those. That's a team of people working in the background to make all of that work. And I've been doing a lot of networking with other people who are interested in the aviation angle on all of this. So that's been good. And just hearing, like I mentioned earlier, I've had multiple people come up and say, they appreciate the work that I'm doing, which is awesome. And then they say something to the effect of, well, I'm involved now because I saw you doing something. And that's pretty cool. Like talking to my friend Seth, he just had to give me the permission to act. And I took it and did something. And now other people have seen me doing that and are doing the same. And that's how progress happens. It's pretty cool to see that, to have been able to make a tangible impact like that. That's good. That helps. That's a strong psychological counterpoint to all of the damage that's all of the damage and psychological distress that's getting caused on the other side. At least I got that out of it. So that's something, I guess.
Yeah. So obviously, as I said before, a lot of people know who you are by now. Maybe not your face, but they know your work, or see kind of what's happening, or have heard about it because of what you've been doing. So obviously we had the new Great Minnesota Get Together, which is no kings, it seems like right now, but after the 28th, obviously I was there and I didn't realize it, and all of a sudden, hell, it's Nick Benson up there. So I got a little clip for us really quick. I really enjoyed your speech there.
Hello, I'm Nick Benson. I like airplanes, and I'm a plaid-clad working dad. Most importantly, I'm a Minnesotan. 6 months ago, I was chatting with a fellow aviation geek, Seth Miller. He's an outspoken critic of ICE deportation flights. I said, Seth, I really admire your courage. I wish I could do that. He replied, it's not that hard. You just have to do it. Now I'm here, volunteering with Minnesota 5051. We count every person being loaded on ICE flights at MSP. There were 19 yesterday. We revealed that Delta Airlines is flying Minnesota kids to concentration camps. Seth told me it's not going to be that hard, but truthfully, it's been a struggle, hasn't it? We've been remembering Victor Manuel Diaz, Renee Good, Alex Preddy. We've been thinking about our neighbors who've been stuck at home, unable to go to school, work, or the doctor. We've been thinking about the kids who are not sure if mom or dad will be home tonight for bedtime snuggles. The students who are not sure if their friend with a cute hat will ever get to play with them ever again. We've knelt in apartment hallways, Spanish over speakerphone, explaining that we were there to help. We've woken up full of rage after a nightmare, discovering ICE agents lurking in another place that used to be safe. It wasn't easy, but we had to do it. But what if Metro Surge wasn't the end? What if it was just the beginning? What if the upcoming year is worse than the year before? Silent businesses, complicit institutions, and cowardly politicians keep failing us, but you don't have to. My fellow Minnesotans, I'm giving each one of you here today explicit permission to act with courage. It's not that hard, you just have to do it. Be the neighbor that Mr. Rogers knew you could be. Be a helper. When the government fails to meet our needs, we meet them ourselves. We feed each other, clothe each other, and care for each other. We keep us safe. So when others are silent, speak up. Stand up for healthcare, education, childcare, and housing. No kings is a great start, but we also need to be done with cowards. When I say no kings, you say no cowards. No kings. No kings. I love you, Minnesota. Fuck ICE.
I'm pretty proud of how I did with that. That was pretty cool.
That was great. That was great. Did it take you long to write that? Because that was great.
It was the skeleton of those remarks were my own original thoughts, and they were polished and refined over the course of many phone calls with dear friends at Minnesota 5051 who helped get that concise and tight. And I'm so proud of how that went. Yeah, that was a cool experience to get the message across in such an eloquent way, and to and not completely embarrass or humiliate myself with sort of faux pas either. That was good. That's I've gotten better with the public speaking as time has gone on, and that'll definitely. I mean, I can't even. Yeah,
you probably won't be able to top that one.
To lead to follow through. Yeah, to follow Bruce Springs, to be between Bruce Springsteen and Bernie Sanders.
That was pretty awesome.
And get 200,000 people to do a call and response. It was Yeah, it was a really amazing experience, and I'm so privileged that I had the opportunity to do that. It was that was very cool to get that opportunity. So and as you saw in the background there, Nakima Levy Armstrong and Natalie, whose name I can't remember, from
Earhart.
Haven Watch.
Is it?
Yeah, yes,
Earhart.
Earhart. It's something very close to that. It's not anyway.
Yeah,
but they were both awesome. I got to meet both of them. Natalie is super genuine and sweet, and they are doing the Haven Watch stuff that they're doing doing aftercare stuff for people coming back at Whipple is just unbelievably amazing, compassionate work they're doing. And Nakima Levy-Armstrong is exactly as feisty. What you've read on the tin is what you get. Like, that's Nakima.
Yeah, I've seen her in person. She's awesome.
She's
awesome.
Really amazing. And the fire that she has and the disdain for authority, which I am coming to respect more and more every minute I spend around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a very cool experience to just be, to be with my wife and I sitting on the steps of the Capitol, chatting with Nakima as Bernie Sanders is up not too far from us, going on and on stage as only Bernie can.
That was long.
It was a really surreal moment, and it's going to be tough to top that, and to be doing it for a good and noble cause, and to have not completely floundered and squandered the opportunity. It was good.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. The intrusive thought I had was to just say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Dylan."
Yeah.
And walk back from the microphone and just had pandemonium, because of course Bob Dylan wasn't there, and that was never part of the plan anyway. But yeah, the chaotic evil impulse I had to push down, because that would have been anyway, that was the intrusive thought I had to fend off with the opportunity. But yeah, it was an honor to get to do it, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's a weird feeling, because obviously so much has happened, but I think people genuinely have been putting in so much work, and we've seen so much trauma. People have not been able to take a break and a breath. So it was very nice to have a day where we could, like, collectively stand together. It's celebration is a weird word, but standing in solidarity. And
another example of how it's impossible to talk about any of this.
Yeah.
But it was it was a nice opportunity to go and get the message out, and be with other like-minded people. That was nice, and to feel like you're I mean, there are plenty of valid critiques about the event too, of course, but I mean, it was
I agree.
Yeah, it was nice to be with other like-minded people, and to see the solidarity of that large of a crowd of people. Because anyone who's been paying attention to all of this, we've all had the moment where we're talking about something tangential to this, to someone who just isn't as looped in or informed, and they'll go, "Oh, is that still happening?" That was a conversation I had a couple of days ago with someone. They were asking me to do something, and I was like, "Oh, I would just wish I had bandwidth for that, but I'm still, pretty tied up with all this advocacy stuff." They're like, "Oh, that's still happening?" I'm just like, this could have pulled out all of my hair. Like, yeah, I mean, what a privilege it is. And I mean, I feel good for those people who are able to check out and have the ability to not be paying attention, where the world's being a dumpster fire is not something that they have to worry about. That's good for them. I'm envious of their ability to check out, I guess.
I just don't have that in me. I don't have it in
me.
I
don't have the empathy for it, but I have the envy for the ability to do it, if that makes sense. So
there you go. So I think about kind of what you were talking about in that speech there, and there's a few kind of themes that I've been thinking about here. Obviously, you're looking at planes, you're watching them doing human trafficking, but you also talked about these politicians and being slow to act, and people being silent, and you're just talking about it. Oh, these people that seem to be unaffected, So there's a lot of people and a lot of politicians and people that are generally still comfortable here. And I start to think about what is causing that. And not only are you doing, watching human trafficking and all these things, but you're watching a government contractor. So there's money behind this. So kind of what are your thoughts on how the money really is playing, into how this is happening and why it's still being permitted?
I mean, so it'll be a surprise to nobody, but like, the money's the problem, right? And that's on both sides of that equation. It's all of the grift and the, the insider dealing the kissing the ring and getting rewarded for it is going on behalf of the airlines and the contractors that are operating these flights. But then on the other side, I think that's part of the reason why we've had there's so much bureaucratic inertia to overcome when you're looking at, rent relief funds or programs like that. When you have a state government where the DFL is terrified of any allegations or appearances or the potential for fraud, waste, and abuse, that runs completely against the ability to get money out and resources out quickly in any sort of a way that's actually going to be beneficial to the community, right? So part of me, I can understand the perspective. If you were a state level lawmaker here in Minnesota, that's a really tough situation to get put in. And I don't know how how do you respond to this in a useful way? How do you offer rent relief or something like that? I mean, you would have an eviction moratorium would be the answer to that. But then you'll have someone who says, well,
Prove it.
a lot of small landlords or small businesses who are relying on that money too. And that's tough. So if you actually have money that's getting thrown around, again, it's another example, just like it was with all the COVID relief.
Yep.
It's going to be something where that's a tricky situation to deal with from a government perspective. I get it. But then the problem is we've had other situations too, where even when the money's not getting thrown around, the politicians or the political appointees are still acting cowardly. Like the most recent example of that I've have firsthand experience with is dealing again with our Metropolitan Airport Commission. We had a meeting with, the public meeting for them with a public comment period was last week. And we were there and Minnesota 51, myself, along with labor people at SEIU 26 and I don't remember if it was Isaiah or Faith in Minnesota. It might have been both. I apologize for not remembering which one. Other progressive religious people. We're there to address the commission, and basically we were saying Delta had asked for $1 million from the airport's capital improvement fund to be spent on a study to build a new lounge at the airport. So there weren't any problems where the money was coming from. This was money that was the airlines all contribute money to infrastructure improvements at the airport. It's an infrastructure improvement. The mechanics of that were fine. What we were asking for was to say, hey, don't release this funding for this study until Delta has a chance to come and meet with the community stakeholders who were in the room there. We had sent a letter to Delta a month ago asking for a meeting with them to just, what are the next steps? What does corporate responsibility look like? How do you have accountability for the fact that you endorsed the big, beautiful bill that paid for Metro Surge and you were flying, families to ICE concentration camps? What are you going to do to use your influence to be a positive, good corporate citizen? So we were basically saying, pause the funding on that lounge study until Delta meets with the community stakeholders here. And the vote, we asked them, procedurally it was in the consent agenda, so it was just going to get voted a straight thumbs up along with everything else that's routine, the minutes of the previous meetings, trivial minutia like that. So we asked them, pull that out of the consent agenda and have a discussion, have a vote on it. And it's a chance where you're going to get, we're giving you it's a rare opportunity to do something with respect to ICE and all of this. Those opportunities are precious few and far between. And no, they just didn't. It was consent was passed, no discussion, unanimously passed it. And, these are all appointees that have been appointed by, the vast majority of them by Governor Walz, or by, I think at least one of them appointed by Dayton previously. So they're all DFL appointees. These are the people that as progressives, we think these are the people that are on our side, and just completely failing us. It was very frustrating to see that happen. And then afterwards, in the remarks, one of them went on a fairly lengthy lecture against, it wasn't what I said. I think it was what he thought I was going to say, but didn't say. And it was all very frustrating. And it's just an example of, here's a political group that's supposed to be working in the public interest. Here's an opportunity to do something. We're giving you this opportunity on a silver platter, and then just completely abdicate their role to serve the public's best interests. It's tough. So I guess it might seem, it's unintuitive that an airline might have a lot of power like this. Like, what is the actual leverage and what sort of power does Delta actually have?
Huge.
The
In
well,
the state of
yeah, so
Minnesota,
like
huge.
yeah, well, right, and then but like the theory of the case was that we all remember this family separation policy in 2018, where
Mhm.
ICE was where they were separating children from their families as just a again the cruelty is the point. It's a punitive action that was happening in 2018. That program ended when the airport, or excuse me, when the airlines put their feet down and said, we are not going to be complicit in this anymore. I think it was the flight attendant unions at American, United, and Frontier who put their feet down, said, we're not doing this anymore. The airlines issued statements condemning the family separation process. And literally hours later, Trump said, okay, well, we're going to stop that process. And he signed the executive order that day. That was a causal reaction between the airline demanding something and the administration stopping it. So we could do the same thing again right now with
When was that? Was that the first time? The first
yeah, that was in
administration?
that was 2018 during
Okay.
Trump's first administration.
Okay.
The airlines have the power to do this. Like the only reason Dilley is so the Dilley detention center is where families are flown. It was where Liam and his dad were flown by Delta Airlines to the Dilley detention center. That's how they got from Minneapolis to San Antonio, was on a Delta flight. If the airlines wanted to stand up to a president with a 35% approval rating and publicly condemn this horrific process, the same one that's being condemned by Miss Rachel and Raffi, the airlines could stand up against this and Dilley would be shut down. That process would start tomorrow if the airlines wanted to, but instead they decide not to. We had the opportunity to have our airport nudge Delta in the right direction. Delta really wants that new lounge here. Delta would listen if our airport said, hey, if there was actually some sort of a negative consequence for them.
Yep.
And we just completely squandered the airport authority here just completely squandered that opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's so upsetting to me to see people who are supposed to be public servants tripping over themselves at an opportunity to do something and just rubber stamping what was expected already. It's very frustrating and disheartening. So I don't even remember what the prompt was for that, but that's that's something that happened last week, and it still riles me up thinking about how that unfolded.
I'm wondering what state this is actually. No, I was looking to see if they have political contributions listed for Minnesota. But no, I look, they have 8,900 employees in Minnesota.
They have a huge employment base. And I mean, just to give you an idea of how looped into everything they are, the person who was it's not press secretary because that's something that the president has, the equivalent of the governor's office, the equivalent of their press secretary, director of communications or whatever it's called, recently just left their job and they went to work for Ed Bastian at Delta Airlines. So that just gives you an idea. Like it's all,
Yeah, I know how this works.
That tells you everything you need to know right there. Right. So it's frustrating. Like, yeah, the DFL are supposed to be the good guys, and what just at least from the narrow scope that I'm looking down,
I would say the better,
with
the
respect
better
to the
guys,
airport.
the better guy, or
Well,
the better ones,
right.
we'll say.
Again, we're all on this path of where we're getting with our progressive enlightenment, right? So that's where I'm at right now. It's like, come on, guys. It's very frustrating. So anyway.
Yeah. And I think it's really hard to, obviously, I think fascism is one of those things that unites a lot of unlikely people together, and sometimes you got to kind of bite your tongue when it comes to fighting a, greater power like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as Delta, I don't know, were you the one who alerted people that it was Liam Ramos, or was that someone who brought that to you, or how did that happen?
So Minnesota Public Radio News had reporting that the kids were flying to the detention facilities on commercial flights. So to me, that means on a public, like an airline flight, like Delta, United, that like you or I would fly if we had to go
through
somewhere.
the terminals.
Exactly. And so when Liam was taken, there was a press conference with both Liam's lawyer or attorney, the family attorney, and members of the Columbia Heights School Board and superintendent had a press conference where they had a pretty detailed timeline of how Liam had gotten down to Dilley. And I started digging into it. And through, my day job, I had the ability to pull reports and look at schedules and things like that. Delta was the only airline that flew commercial flights nonstop flights between Minneapolis and San Antonio. So I looked at which gate was the flight to San Antonio on the morning when Liam was flown away. And I sent a public records request to the airport, and I asked, I want to see the security footage from the area around this specific gate and the ones on either side of it and the area outside of the airplane too. My thought was that they were probably getting driven in a van like they do for the charter flights with the shackles and all of that. I figured they were getting driven in on a van and kind of sneakily loaded on, kind of out of the public view. But it turned out that's not the case. They walk into the terminal. They're not in shackles or chains or anything. They're with plain clothes escorts or minders, and they board that flight just like anyone else would, just like you or I would, kind of hiding in plain sight. So yeah, I submitted that public records request, and we got the video footage back from the airport that showed the process. We don't know yet if those are federal agents or if those are contractors that were escorting Liam and his father on that flight. My hunch is that they're contractors. I think all three of them probably. But anyway, that was the work we were doing. That was our data request. And and as far as I know, that was the first time that the process that ICE used, it was the first time that we had video documentation of how that process works, of moving a family to a detention center on commercial flights. Yeah, because in watching all of the people, 2,500 or so people getting boarded onto the charter flights that load at the private jet terminal, those people are all in shackles. They're the ones arriving in a convoy. I had never seen any kids involved in that process. I'd seen young adults, the elderly, everything except young children. And so apparently they were getting flown on commercial flights. So it was, that ended up in Rachel Maddow covered that process, and I think had just another example of how nothing makes any sense. She spent about 15 minutes talking about the work we're doing here at the airport and about Liam's story and demanding accountability from Delta. So
yeah,
that was an example of getting a lever was revealed to hopefully make some change. And yeah, it was a weird opportunity of how that all unfolded. And it was
I don't remember.
That's another weird situation.
I don't remember if it was you who was mentioning this or if this was another person's speech, but I think it might have been someone who worked at the airport but I'd seen a speech earlier in the year where they were like, when you're flying through the airport, what are the signs that you see all throughout the airport? And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yep, they have. Yeah, I mean, the airport has signage all over talking about how human trafficking is a problem. And I was just looking at, that wasn't my speech. That was my one of my cohorts at 5051 who made those remarks. And I am blanking on his name now, and I apologize to him. They're on the 5051 Instagram page if you want to pull that up. That was a speech he made at the Metropolitan Airports Commission also. But I was looking at a little banner on the tram at the airport yesterday, and it said 50 people are taken against their will through this airport every year. And I was like, oh, that number is so much larger than that. Yeah. So anyway, it's terrible. I mean, yeah, it's terrible. So anyway, Delta advocated for the big, beautiful bill. If you go to whitehouse.gov and
make money off,
look at the big, beautiful bill, that you'll find their little blurb there supporting it. They flew Liam and his dad to Dilley. They're one of the largest employers in the state. They're tremendously important, and they should be good corporate citizens. And it's disheartening that they still will not meet with us to discuss any of that. That's frustrating to me. There should be some accountability for that.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think about it, and obviously, we're like, hey, thank God there's someone like you out counting the people on the charter flights and everything. And that's when I start to have this realization. It's like, okay, so we have the families and everybody that's going through there. Hopefully those are the only two avenues. And I don't know, people could be getting driven. You never know. I doubt it, but it seems like it's more likely that this is the case. But I just wonder what's the scope of Delta's involvement and how often are people just flying on a normal basis and sitting on or around or in the airport next to these people with absolutely no clue of what's happening. I mean, was he in shackles or anything? It didn't look like they were.
No, yeah, no, there were no chains
Yeah.
involved. Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, if you were looking at it, I mean, we knew it looking at it because he's wearing the same jacket he was wearing in the pictures. Dad's carrying the little Spider-Man backpack. I mean, and it looks like Liam and his dad. But I mean, if you were at the airport and you hadn't, those photos weren't publicized that quickly. I don't think anyone who was around them knew. I don't think my guess would be that the flight attendants did not know. The gate agents, I don't think probably didn't know.
Yeah.
When you watch the video, all of the escorts, so if you watch that video, if you just search Liam Delta, you'll be able to find it. There's 3 adults, it's 2 women and a man who are with Liam and his father. And all 3 of the escorts, the 2 women and the man, all check in at the desk and present some sort of credential to the gate agent there. And I don't know what process is taking place there where they have to present credentials. They had paper tickets also where everyone else had digital tickets. So I don't know if that's just a result of the travel agency they're booked through or whatever. When Delta responds to any inquiry about this, their response is always focused on the fact that any of this travel, government or otherwise, is booked through some travel agency. They don't know who or why that travel is taking place. So that's their response to it. So if you take them at their word there, I mean, it's entirely possible that those gate agents don't know what's going on. And if they are not actually federal agents, if they're contractors, and if they're not armed, they don't have to disclose that they have a weapon to anybody. They can just fly and totally slip under the radar. It's just another group of people traveling. So I can, if you were designing a program to operate in plain sight and be difficult to detect or report, that would be a good solution to that problem. You just have contractors do it. So there's no government travel. So if you're asking for transparency and you're asking how many government flights are on there and if they're for ICE, they can check that box and say no truthfully because it's some contractor moving the people around. It's not a government thing. So those are all things to be thinking about. If we're pushing back and looking for, what steps can we take to do this, or to help combat this? There've been a couple of bills that have gone through that have gotten introduced in the Minnesota House. There was one that I testified on behalf of that had requirements for reporting when these sorts of flights are happening and providing some information, health information and some immigration information, attorney contact information to the airport or the someone at the airport to keep track of all of this. And then it also had provisions where the state government couldn't do work with these airport facilities that do work for ICE Air.
Yeah.
And basically the response to that was that's an impossible ask because the federal government's not going to provide any of that information, for one. And we can't compel them to either. They're the federal government. They get to do what they want. They're the feds. And 2, it was an overly onerous requirement for the state government to comply with from a perspective of how do you know if every vendor that you're dealing with has ever done anything for ICE or something like that before. That's a tough hoop to jump through. So anyway, that's not the way to do it. I think the way that we can go forward, and this was legislation that was introduced by Representative Berg in the House this year. It's get anywhere because we've got this piece together. My fault. It was at the very end of the session, but it was introduced into the register anyway, is following the model that we have in Seattle, where they have a web camera that is pointed at where the flights load. So everyone getting on and off of those flights at the Seattle airport where this happens are on 4 different web cameras. So there's that transparency there. And then the other step is that someone at the airport authority compiles a monthly report. And they have a couple weeks to do that. So it's like the 15th of every month, they have to issue a report that has, more or less the reports that we're compiling now with Minnesota 5051 of, which aircraft was it? What was the route it took? How many people got on? How many people got off? What time was it? That sort of a thing. So if we're looking for a model, if we're looking for policy solutions to help with this, one of the ways we can do that is by improving transparency, where we give the airport authority a mandate and funding to do what needs to be done, where they're documenting what's happening. That doesn't require a buy-in from the federal government. That doesn't require any information from the federal government, because they're just there, and it's a free speech issue. It's recording and documenting. So that's a policy solution that actually would have the ability to, provide some public awareness. And not only that, it's an authoritative source. There's a big difference between when the airport says something is a fact. If you have something where you say Minneapolis Airport Commission, the Metropolitan Airport Commission reports, 30 ICE Air flights last month. That's a very different context from a communications perspective than, angry hippie activist alleges 30 flights last month, or, union alleges something. To have an actual official source to acknowledge reality is also an important thing. So I think that's, if you're looking for a policy answer, we're working on it here in Minnesota. If you have friends anywhere else, these flights operate all across the U.S., advocating for that sort of a transparency policy, just having the webcams and a report, that'll go a long way to raising awareness, and just so people have an understanding of what's going on. Because yes, this is something that's still happening here, and it's something that's happening all across the country. It's not a unique to Minnesota problem. These flights are operating in virtually every large city center across the country. These ICE Air flights are happening on a regular basis. So
Yeah. And when we think about it, we've got, what is it, 170 billion, I think, was initially given to ICE over 4 years. That was like the initial big, beautiful bill. That amount of money, they can't even possibly spend that money in that time. I mean, so
yeah, they can just do they can do whatever they want, and just the Republicans are always very concerned about waste, fraud, and abuse. They'll tell you, we have these flights coming to Minneapolis now. These are 737s. These are big airplanes you would see Southwest or Sun Country or Delta flying,
like 30.
And I'm looking at the last few flights: 10 people, 6 people, 29. These are very, obviously, if that's your family member that's on that flight, that's everything. That's a big number. From a strictly fiscal, disconnected from human reality and experience perspective, that is not a large number of people that are moving on each one of these flights. That it's a tremendously wasteful process to send. On many of these flights, there are more staff on these flights than there are detainees that are getting picked up. And just there should be something for anyone, regardless of what your political persuasion or what your worldview is here. There is something for you to be upset about with how ICE Air works. It could be, if you're concerned about first responders, you should be worried that the firefighters responding to one of these airplanes, if there's a safety incident, if that airplane breaks up on the ground and they respond to it, that the people in that plane are all chained up. Yeah. And if that airplane's on fire, imagine that you're a firefighter and you come across that scene and you have to deal with that. And that the flight attendants on the plane have been told by people. There's reporting from ProPublica that says this, that the flight attendants have been told that you leave the detainees alone. That's not your problem. So, okay, so what about the airport firefighters there? For two, what about the cost of doing all of this, of sending a large 737 to come and pick up, 6 people, 15 people, 30 people from an airport? How does that make any sense from a financial standpoint? That doesn't make any sense. So you're not good for first responders. It's not good from a financial perspective. If you're you're a big fan of rule and law, what about the probable cause that's not being adhered to when these people are getting detained? What about the due process that everyone on U.S. soil is entitled to that isn't being given to them? And what about the fact that the whole reason you operate like this is to take people away from their homes, from their lawyers, from their families, from their resources, and put them in another state where the judiciary and the other people involved in the process are less receptive, and it makes it harder for you to access the rights that you're entitled to, because we're in the United States, and that's supposed to be one of the things that makes us different than everywhere else. We all learned about that in civics. That's one of the great things about being an American, is we have these rights and these processes that we respect. And it's one of the things that makes us American and makes us different than everyone else, is that we have these processes and we respect them. So that should all be delicious red meat policy wise for getting upset if you're a conservative. If you're a filthy hippie like me, what about the fact that you have these people that are in shackles and chains for hours and hours? The fact that they, if there's a pressurization issue on the airplane and that oxygen mask drops down in front of them, you can't get to that if your hands are cuffed and chained to your waist. The indignity of not being able to get up and use a restroom, the fact that they use these big restraining devices called like the wrap or the burrito. It's like a full body straight jacket. They lay that out on the tarmac as a threat to enforce compliance. Once in a while, people are put in these anyway to be made an example of, and they, are stuck in one of these for hours and hours on end. There's no shortage of angles. There's no part of this that makes sense to anyone who looks at this and assesses it in good faith. From a financial, from a safety, from a human rights, from an empathy perspective, nothing about this makes any sense. There's no need that these people need to be sent away in chains. There's no need that families need to be sent to a prison together while immigration details are sorted out. Like, so much of this doesn't make any sense, and yet it's happening. And, that is why I've been spending the last several months of my life as much as I can to raise awareness about this, talk to people about it, network with other people. We need policy changes, and it needs to stop, because it's just the scale of the industrialized cruelty that's happening right now is just unconscionable, and it goes against everything that it means to be an American. It goes against the principles that we all understand and agree on what it's supposed to mean to be an American. It's counter to all of that. We're a nation of immigrants. It doesn't make none of this makes any sense. So, and again, there was reporting 70% of the people taken during Metro Surge had no criminal record. A lot of these people are people who are here doing things the right way. They're following the rules. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But still, regardless of that, they're getting taken away. And it's so frustrating to see this process going again and again, and to have people who they're in their bubble and they just don't understand it. So they're important things to be talking about, and to, a lot of people, through no fault of their own, the conservative media machine, social media, all of that has poisoned the minds of a lot of otherwise very good people through no direct fault of their own. We all know people who have gone off the deep end with their whatever is poisoning their mind. We need to start talking to people using plain and simple language and demonstrating how these processes are wrong and un-American. And, the Trump's approval rating is like mid-30s now. The Metro Surge took his best issue and made it his worst. So progress is happening, but we've got to, like, everyone we've got to keep pushing that ball forward. We've got a big dumb rock to push up a big dumb hill, but like, we're making progress. We've got to make a difference. And what else can we do? We have to make a difference somehow. So
Yeah.
oof.
Yeah. And so I think about, obviously there's the public, what can we do, through pushing legislators and things like that. Obviously there's so much that needs to be done there, and change that needs to happen, and sweeping these people out. But I start to think about our economy, and really, this whole show, it's occupation breakdown. So I'm trying to break down how all these things, interconnect, all of these things in society, and really make people understand kind of how this kind of works into everything that's happening. And like I said, we got the $170 billion. We've got all these companies that are, likely a lot of them were government contractors before. Not all of them. Some of them may have come up just because of this, and they're politically aligned, and that's the case. But as you said, we've got those Delta employees that maybe they didn't even realize it. They maybe didn't know at that time what they were taking part in. So we've got employees, whether it's Delta, I mean, supplying the buildings, doing mechanical work. There's union members probably showing up there. We've got waste management. We've got, you name it. There's very, very, very many contracts and things that are going into keeping this alive. We've got security companies. We've got data infrastructure. God, they're spying on everything we do now. We got flock cameras. We got all these things. So is there some type of responsibility that, this is probably kind of broad, but, companies have, or is it the people working and supporting them, or are these just companies just like, are they just helpless and they have to do it? We have to take the money, right? We just like, and
You've
that's
got that the fiduciary obligation to the shareholder is all powerful and mighty. It's yeah, I think it's important, like, in an airline context, the average frontline employees are not the ones who are complicit. They're not the
Yeah,
ones that
yeah.
are making this happen.
Correct.
I think one of the reasons why Delta, so talking about like the family separation policy, it was American, United, and Frontier that kind of led the charge on that. Delta did eventually come around and condemn the family separation policy, but it was after Trump signed the executive order. So you're kind of late to the party there.
Hmm.
The reason why that probably was because Delta hasn't allowed their flight attendants to unionize. They're very they're the only airline you've ever heard, any normal person would have ever heard of, that doesn't have unionized flight attendants.
Interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so they like to paint themselves as a very big progressive, they've got all of their positive DEI messaging and stuff too, and that's great that they seem to take that seriously, but they are not labor friendly. Just as one example. So yes, the labor has a role to play in that, but you have to be unionized in order for that to be effective at an airline of that size. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. And, so obviously we've got people, whether it's throughout the state of Minnesota or just all of the country, that whether they realize it or not, sometimes more directly than others. I think there's some that are obvious. It's like, yeah, I'm making weapons, or I'm making something like that. Sometimes it might be like, hey, maybe I'm contributing with this super benign product, and you don't even realize it. And it's like, we're all kind of benefiting, or, living off of this influx of cash, whether we like to agree, admit to it or not, so I don't know. I guess I don't even know what kind of question I'm going there, but yeah, that's just my thought. I just think it's an interesting thing. And obviously Delta being a large employer in the state, we've got quite a few others. So I guess in your case, it seems like you said previously, it was the employees that rose up. And at some point, as a company, yeah,
I mean,
you're going to hire
right. So
everybody.
yeah, if Delta didn't, yeah. So so Delta Airlines,
Or not
if
even
you buy
Delta, but
their word
United or the other ones. Yeah.
yeah. But from Delta's perspective, if we're taking their word at face value that they had no knowledge of this before, okay, that's color me skeptical, but okay, whatever. At this point, they've known what's been going on for months at this point. Like, so why is still no action yet? Like, we're the corporate governance that allows this to continue to happen is the problem now. And like, yeah, it's tough to get that internal pressure when your employees cannot be unionized and can be fired for any reason at any time. So that makes it hard. So that pressure has to come externally. So that could be, booking with another airline when you're flying somewhere, or not renewing your Delta Sky Miles credit card when it comes due. There are many alternatives in the credit card landscape, and I know many Minnesotans have those Delta cards to get their points. So I don't know. There's a lot of potential leverage there to be looking at and thinking about. So
Yeah.
it's all. And another thing we haven't even touched, I know we probably have to wrap things up fairly quickly here, but another thing that, like, another angle that we're looking at is, like, Delta Airlines is they're a big interesting case because they're an airline that people have actually heard of that are involved in all this ICE stuff. The charter flights, like the ones we were talking about earlier with the people in chains getting marched up the steps outside, those are all operated by these small charter airlines that, generally speaking, normal people have never heard of before. Companies like Eastern Air Express, Global Crossing, Key Lime Air Wisconsin, to name a few. Those are very hard to boycott or have an action against because they just don't interact with normal everyday life generally. The lever you have there is that those airlines are all utilized by college athletic teams, and in some cases professional athletic teams, for their team travel. And so there's definitely an opportunity there where if you are, if you're at a college or a university, you should be making sure that your athletic teams are not flying around in the same airplanes that have been flying your shackled neighbors around in. We had a case here in Minnesota a couple of months ago where the same airplane left Minnesota, brought people down to El Paso, I think, or Harlingen, somewhere in Texas, to one of the ICE detention centers. It did a short hop to Austin, where it picked up the University of Wisconsin Badgers women's volleyball team, and then flew them back to Madison after the conclusion of a volleyball tournament down there in Texas. Same day, same airplane that had people chained up in it, possibly soiling themselves while they're getting flown. And then hours later, there's a picture on Instagram of the Badgers volleyball coach, holding a trophy in the seat next to him that could have been occupied by a shackled migrant hours before that same day. And, to be absolutely clear, I don't think that coach knew that.
I'm sure
at the
they
time.
didn't. I'm sure they didn't.
They're not the. That's not a choice of the coach.
No. I get it. But just the sheer insanity of that.
It's just, exactly. The sheer insanity of it is exactly, that it's just such a normalized thing that you have something that's taking people in chains against their will, away from their families and their legal support, and then the next day or a couple hours later is flying college athletes around, is terrible. So that's another angle to be aware of. And if you are listening and you're a college student or you're an alumni and you're getting hit up for contributions to the Alumni Association Fund at your alma mater, perhaps you should mention that you are not interested in contributing anymore until you know that the athletic teams are not going to be on airlines that are operating for ICE. That's something you could consider doing. So
that's
there are many ways to attack it, and the aviation angle is obviously what I'm hyper fixated on. There are so many other things going on in the economy with respect to all of this, but the logistics of it are very important. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about for the last few months.
Yeah.
It's been a lot.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I guess just two more things here. You mentioned the thing about Delta. They have all their DEI stuff. Well, I just want to remind everybody that in order to be a government contractor, I think it happened during Biden, basically. They made a requirement that you had to have DEI programs in order to maintain your status as a government contractor. So for anybody that worked as a government contractor for whether whether they were doing it in earnest or not is another question, but those things were happening and they were in existence if you were in one of those companies. And then, all of a sudden Trump gets elected, and that was one of the very first things that he removed. And not only was it that you don't have to have it anymore, it is if you have a DEI program, you are no longer able to be a government contractor. So I don't know how long the, decision was and when quickly it was effective, but essentially overnight all these companies were like, yep, we're done with that. See you later. And we could
Yeah,
say what
it's
we want. And yeah.
yeah. What a country, huh?
Yeah.
It's all terrible.
Yeah. And it's crazy. Just obviously as Minnesotans, we like to be like, obviously with everything that happened around George Floyd, and you like to think that there is something positive that came about. And it did seem like that, at least for some moment there, and it seems like it was just, as soon as that they had the chance there. So just something I was thinking about. But the last thing I was going to say is, obviously, we'd been kind of talking through messaging and stuff like that. The last episode that I did have was with, Father Chris Collins from, he's in St. Peter Claver and St. Paul. And so he came there on Holy Thursday and had that service outside. They had just recently had the federal, court order that came across saying, hey, you're able to go in and give them religious services, and they were able to do it for Holy Thursday. So, they get to go in there. What do you know? We have no detainees here. Shucks. And so
Yeah.
I was like, hey, you know what? I actually feel like I could prove this wrong. And it was, a week later. And so I sent you a message. And what do you know? The next day, I have flight, the actual
Yep.
footage of the flight from you.
The flight information and the people on it. Yeah.
31 people. And there hadn't been a flight for like 5 days or something.
Yep.
You're telling me they pulled those 30 people out of their ass?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know because perhaps they're being held at a different facility because they can't be held there overnight. Who knows? I don't trust them. You don't. No one in good. No, I mean, we all know better than to trust anything they say. I'm glad those clergy are doing the work they're doing and getting into to help those people and
certainly
offer them any support they can if they want it, and provide a little insight as to what might be going on in there too is good. But it's all so terrible, and also just seems mundane and routine now. It's what a disheartening and sorry state of affairs we've arrived in now. So
yeah, and I almost I didn't think about it at the time, but I always wanted to be like, as a member of the Catholic faith, we're not supposed to judge other people, and we leave that to God. How do you deal with that in a situation when they're lying to your face like that?
Yeah, I'm glad that's not my department. I'd have a hard time reconciling that myself too. That's
my final question to you before we kind of wrap this up, I guess. You had mentioned earlier, obviously in the leading up to it, what was it, Seth Miller? You talked to him, and he was just like, just do it,
Yeah.
And we talked about the mental toll and all the stuff that you kind of went through, and you were saying like, man, if I had been like that the whole time, how could I have gone on, but you start to think about it and you're like, yeah, I am just a white dude, and they're not going to load me up in shackles and put me on that plane. In my case, I was thinking about it. I'm like, I don't have a passport. I've never left the country. So the fact that I am just able to walk around willy nilly without anything in my pocket, and there's people that have been born or citizens longer than I've been existed in this world, have to carry around some bullshit that, I am not obligated to. That to me is troubling,
Yep. Yeah, no kidding.
But how do you talk like as far as we're looking at people standing up and just looking for different ways that they could, hey, maybe you've got this weird niche or weird skill or something. What's your advice to people that, other than just go do it, but what kind of advice do you have for people that are wondering, what can I do or how do I get involved, even if it's not through an organization, but for just general words of wisdom?
So there's lots of ways to be a good helper that don't involve some sort of deep professional knowledge or key insights on how things work. Sorry, I had to start over here. There's lots of ways that you can be a helper without deep professional knowledge or insight on things. Like, speaking from my own personal experience, it's just as rewarding being at the food shelf and packing bags of rice or divvying out onions that are going into a box and getting picked up by a chain of neighbors coming by where everyone's helping out and doing something like that. That is an equally rewarding and good use of your time, as not everyone's contribution is something where they're going to end up on a podcast talking about it, and that's totally fine. There's lots of good ways to help. Food shelves, if you have the ability to help financially, Stand with Minnesota, I think it's .org. Sorry, I don't remember specifically. Has a whole list of great resources where you can help financially in a variety of great ways. You should be thinking about all of these things when we are coming up on the primaries and the general elections this fall and summer, or excuse me, this summer and this fall, and just be thoughtful and aware of what you're doing. Be kind and neighborly to people. Have a conversation, like, be nice to your neighbors, reach out to them, push them out of the ditch when they're stuck in the snow. Try to talk to your neighbors. I've been struggling with it myself, but we've all got someone in our neighborhood. Maybe they're flying the old Minnesota flag now and they didn't care about the flag before, or maybe they've got that Trump banner on the side of their house. I've been struggling with it, but I do think that, there's something to be said for grace and forgiveness. I'm not a particularly religious person, but the religious folks I know seem to talk about that a lot. That's probably something we should all be thinking about a little bit more, even when it's hard. And just being a good person existing in your space and being courteous and kind to other people, I think that helps go a long way. But I mean, that means you have to get out and vote for the best candidates that are gonna, that are willing to say they're willing to abolish ICE, that are willing to stand up for programs and for policies that are actually helpful for people. Yeah, it's tough. There's a lot out there to do, but a lot of small steps add up. And just, again, like I mentioned, being a good example for other people is a big thing too. Encouraging other people to, go to a protest, go to help out at your food shelf, go volunteer at the hospital. There's a lot of really cool, good ways to be a good person that are completely apolitical. If you just want to make the world a better place, there are so many ways that you can do that. You can walk dogs at an animal shelter. You can help volunteer and help people get through tough time at a hospital volunteer desk. You could, there's so many. Just be a good, do something that would make Mr. Rogers proud. Go be a good neighbor somehow. And that's totally an obtainable, achievable step that can be as simple as waving at your neighbor when you drive by, when you see them out walking the dogs, or holding a door open for someone. Like, yeah, we're good people. We need to start being kind to each other. If you're in a position where you can do more than that, the sky's the limit. And you can. Yeah, I literally was just a weird guy yelling at the airport commission 6 months ago, and now it's all gone crazy.
Yeah,
So,
and
it's everyone has the ability to make a big difference somehow, and I give you permission to do that and make a difference. Like, it's like Seth said, it's not that hard. You just have to do it, and it's true.
And so if you happen to be let's say a train enthusiast, and you happen to notice that they're using trains or something like that, damn well speak up, but
Absolutely.
For people that are in maybe that technical position where, hey, maybe you are one of the few people that does actually have the ability to do this. Any thoughts on that as well?
Oh yeah,
Advice for them,
absolutely.
I guess.
Yeah, there's lots of professional ways, and everyone knows their industry and their niche better than I do. So yeah, if you're involved in something like that, if you know something, there's Minnesota's lucky we've got pretty robust whistleblower protections here. Talk to the press about it. If you're work for an airline and you have something you want to say, you're welcome to reach out to me. I am contactable, and we can figure out how to get that information and your concerns out, and I'll make sure uh you can trust me. I'm not going to tell anyone
Yeah.
who you are or anything. So those are opportunities that are out there. And yeah, if you're looped into something like that and you want to if you want to talk to someone about what's going on because it's bothering you, there's a reporter. There's lots of great reporters in the Twin Cities. They would love to hear from you and help get your story out there. You might have to email them a couple of times, speaking from personal experience, but eventually they will show up. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's funny.
so
And so I just remembered one last question here is we're talking about the advice you gave for people standing up and, going out and doing this work and putting their face out and everything. Have you gone through any negative consequences through this? Have you had any major social implications or, business relations or consequences or things that have happened because of this?
it's taken me a really long time to respond to some business emails. So that might be a negative consequence. I think I replied to a couple the other day that it took me like 6 weeks to reply to them, which was totally bad. And so that wasn't great, but that wasn't that wasn't, that was my own self-sabotage by ignoring, my professional obligations here. As far as on a personal level, I'm not aware, for business wise, the number of subscribers I have continues to kind of trend upwards. It doesn't seem like there was a mass exodus or anything.
Mm-hmm.
As far as other personal relationships, I mean, I think people who know me generally know that I'm not when I talk about all this, I try not to be hyperbolic. I think people understand that I'm coming to this from an honest position. So even if they don't, if their reality is such that they're unplugged from all of this and they might think it's ridiculous, they still know it's me. There are a couple of people in the comment section who, I guess that's something. The comment section, I don't ever read the comments. They're always so terrible.
I was going to say, I'm sure you got some.
Yeah. Some of the early press in the early part of this was getting our local TV stations came out and did some stories about this and did some coverage about it. And the way that they were engaging to get the social media engagement that they were working on, they were they had it professional aviation enthusiast alleges ICE flights at MSP or something.
Alleges.
And of course, that's there's all sorts of problems with that, but that's the editor doing their job to generate more comments, right? A professional aviation enthusiast. That sounds like BS, right? That sounds like a nonsense thing. So of course that's what everyone is saying. Oh yeah, I'm a professional bikini inspector and blah blah blah. All this other stuff. I get it because they have a job. They're selling eyeballs and engagement. That's their angle. And that's fine. I know I'm engaged and trying to make the world a better place in good faith. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. If someone wants to say something bad about that online, that's their prerogative. That's whatever. That's fine. Yeah. As far as anything else like that, there hasn't really been. Yeah, I haven't had. A couple of weird confrontations while doing protest stuff. I had someone who was upset that I was holding the Minnesota flag, and they ended up giving a Nazi salute as they were walking away. It was a very, those people are alive and in the community and around and breathing in the community too. They're not all bots.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That's the weird.
That's something to be aware of. That certainly was a first in my lived experience. So yeah, it takes all types out there, but yeah, no, it generally hasn't been bad. I'm very lucky that I have a supportive family, and especially my wife is amazing. She's a nurse, so she's used to being a hero on a regular basis anyway, professionally. So it's nice to have an opportunity where I feel like I'm making a positive contribution to society, and having the support of my family is pretty cool. So yeah, no complaints and no regrets there. And again, I'm lucky to be in a position where I could do something like that. That's definitely a privilege.
Awesome. Well, any final thoughts for the day, or, before we go?
I mean, it's all ridiculous. We all have the ability to do something and nudge the needle in the right direction. Be a good example. And yeah, we're all doing our best. It feels hopeless, but there's a lot of other people out there who are doing good work and, bending the arc of history back in the right direction. It's going to take a long time. And, there's more bad news every day, but we will get through it. And I know much of your audience here in Minnesota, we should all be damn proud to be Minnesotans and glad that we live here. So we're in a position where we still have a lot more freedom than a lot of our neighbors in other states do. So be glad for that. Be proud of what we accomplished during Metro Surge, and be thankful for what we have opportunity wise here now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so, Nick, I really appreciate you coming on today. I know we've been trying to coordinate this for a little while. For people that are looking to follow your work, perhaps your app, things like that, or if there's any way they could help, I don't know if you're taking funding, stuff like that. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you're interested in helping support the work that Minnesota 5051 covers, the volunteer observers at the airport, covers their parking fees. So you should go to Minnesota MN50501.org to learn more about what Minnesota 5051 does, and to help contribute financially there if you would like to. If you're interested in learning more about the ICE Air Flights or other things I'm interested in, my personal website is ottergoose.net, the two aquatic animals, ottergoose.net. And you can find links to my social media profiles there if you're interested. I'm pretty much only active on Blue Sky now. Once in a while, I'll post something on Reddit too, but that's generally where I'm hanging out these days. If you're interested in keeping tabs on all of that, Gillian, if you're interested in just ICE Air in general, Gillian Brockle is the reporter to follow there. Again, I've got links from my ottergoose.net site to her and other resources. If you're interested in the aviation angle, and of course, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. It's yeah, there's a lot to learn out there, and yeah, thanks for listening to me yammer for so long. If you made it this far, you have my warmest personal regard. Thank you.
Yeah, and obviously I'll try to tag 5051 on some of these videos here, and yeah, they've obviously if you're looking to see your work, they also are publishing it on their pages. So
yes, yeah, Minnesota 5051 publishes the video
yes,
updates. Yes, so you'll see those updates there, and yes, very looped in on all of the aviation angle, and then Minnesota 5051 does a whole bunch of other fun stuff too.
Yeah.
There's a lecture series,
Incredible
and
work.
some juror education training coming up, all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, they always surprise me with new things, and I'm like, wow, I really didn't expect that. So yeah, it was wonderful talking with you. Yeah, for myself, if you're looking to support my show, you could follow me at Occupation Breakdown is the podcast. I'm on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as well. So, and then also my political stuff, it's at Dissent Dad on all those same platforms. If you want to support this show, this is, don't make a dime off this, completely self-funded. Everything I do here, you could support me at Venmo and buy me a coffee at Dissent Dad. I appreciate you coming on, Nick, today. Thank you very much, and you have a great night.
Yeah, pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.